Hello, welcome to another podcast from Care at Scale. My name is Greg Greeners, and I have the opportunity of welcoming my guest today, Daniel Regan. He is the founder and CEO of Healing Us Centers. And in this episode, we have the opportunity to walk through Daniel's story. So with that, welcome, Daniel.
Thank you for having me today, Greg.
This is going to be a good one. I can't wait to hear, as I've said in some of the other ones, the story that causes everything else to happen in your life. And in your situation, this started quite early in your life, in your teenage years, and it had a lot to do with the location you were at, which happened to be New Jersey, and some of the things that were happening just in the environment that brought about part of the addiction process. So with that, please start me in the beginning where school was great.
You were all the way back to it.
All the way back. Exactly.
Yes. Again, thank you for having me. And yes, my story is one that could be put into a movie. In fact, we put it into a book. I kind of have to give you some background of my early years, just so you get the context of the turmoil that happens with addiction or where it comes from. I think it's really important not to just harp on the Hollywood of addiction where, you're all down and out, but how does someone actually go down into that mindset?
Mm-hmm.
My family growing up in New Jersey, we had a very typical, I describe my family as like the Brady Bunch, very close knit, where we have Italian heritage in our family. So every Sunday is, eating at grandma and grandpa's, eating until you're full. Very, very close family. And my parents have given me all the love and care that I could ask for in the world. Hardworking people. My sister, she was a national championship horseback rider. My other sister was into the arts. And I myself, growing up, I was a straight A student, very cautious and caring person, funny enough. Very quiet, very introverted in a lot of ways. And I remember being a kid and taking the weight of the world on from a very young age. I remember the commercials like in the 90s. You probably remember them, like 99 cents a day, you can save a kid. And those would strike me as a child. Like I couldn't believe that people in the world were suffering in this kind of capacity, where my mom will tell you she remembers me at like 4 hiding pieces of my dinner and saving them under my bed for the children, like that I'm going to not be able to save. I would just take on things to a different point, and I was very quiet and introverted. So I would keep them down inside and let it build and build and build. So I had this anxiety from the start. And growing up, my sisters, everybody were getting along, doing their things. And in middle school comes that coming of age, growing up. I was just kind of a late bloomer, if you will. I was shorter in the classes, and all my friends were grown beards and everything before me. So I was like easy to pick on kind of thing. But that bullying, being quiet, having anxiety just weighed me down. And then I was introduced to marijuana for the first time by actually a family member. And, it wasn't like someone was pressuring me to do it. It was there, and they asked if I wanted to do it, and curiosity got the cat kind of thing, where I tried it. And it wasn't even about getting high. It was just all of a sudden I had this relief from really caring, right? All of a sudden I was giggling. I was like life of the party. I felt different. And right then I knew that like I wanted to do this. And, my parents taught me the dangers of drugs and everything. I was scared to death of them at first. Like I thought, you took a hit of weed and you dropped down and you died. You know what I mean? That was my vision of it because of, the instructions that my parents gave me. But then you're seeing like a family member, smoking in front of you. They're not falling down and dying. They're giggling, having a good time. I feel pressured to, and insecure, like I should be part of the mix. And so I do it. And then all of a sudden I feel better. And I go, wait, everybody's been lying about this. This is fantastic. What are they talking about? Right. And then I go into school. And, I tell my friends what I did, and they're like, oh my God, you did that. That's crazy. Blah, blah, blah. And this alter ego started to kind of emerge in me, where like all of a sudden I was getting like this attention for doing this thing. And the thing seemed to fix this weight that I was carrying around. So it just seemed like a win-win-win situation, in my head. So of course, like, you start upping the ante, you start gaining access to getting these drugs more. You start mixing with the crowd that has that, and it has a snowball effect that kind of takes over. Now, while this is going on, I'm maintaining my grades. I'm on the wrestling team. I'm on the swim team. I'm in AP courses, excelling in every regard. So easy to cover up this double life for me because I had all this good stuff going on over here. So, from the outside looking in, it looks like Daniel has it all together. And of course, as the years go on and, high school comes, it's not, a lot of kids are doing marijuana, now, but I'm mixing into this crowd and on an accelerated pathway in it. So it becomes ecstasy, cocaine, mushrooms, acid, different things we start mixing in. And it's important to note, like, we're in New Jersey, the accessibility of drugs is insane looking back as my older adult self, looking back how accessible it was in middle school and high school. And it was easy to get your hands on. And this was when I was a freshman in high school. This was 2006, 2005, pills really started to emerge, like the Oxycontin, the Percocets, stuff like that. You started seeing your friends talk about this, doing this on the weekends, and you could get it from your mom's cabinet and blah, blah, blah. Like those whispers were happening. And I tried it. Honestly, it was like a fluke. It wasn't like I was looking for it. I had a headache in school. I was dealing with like a migraine. And I told one of my friends, and he's like, "Here, take this." And it was a Percocet 5. And, obviously it took my headache away. It was very weak, whatever it was. But I was like, "Whoa, this is different." And I actually texted my friend the next day, like, "You got any more of those Percocets?" I left my phone by accident getting up in the morning on the couch, and my mom picked up my phone, read this text, and she goes, I came home. "What is this? What is a perk?" And I told her what it was, and her being naive and not really thinking that her son was doing anything really wrong. I came up with an excuse, like I had a headache the day before I got this, and I was asking for it again, even though I knew, this isn't Tylenol, at this point.
No.
So my mom pulled me out of school. She sent me to a Catholic private school, thinking that, different mix of kids. It was worse. Kids that had money. And so now I have like friends in both of these schools. And, we're starting to deal the drugs at this point and make money. And my friends are getting really heavy into like Oxycontin and everything at this point. I stayed away from it I didn't really like the way it made me feel, but I was heavily into cocaine and everything else. Again, still keeping this double life going. So my parents were very, very unaware and just thought like some of the things were red flags that I was doing, just avoiding home, stuff like that. But they thought it was, Dan's a teenager and he's doing teenage things,
Right.
So my parents are really naive at this point. My junior going into senior year, I was a amateur pro motocross rider, and we had a practice track in my backyard and whatnot, and I took off a jump, overjumped it, ended up shattering my L2, L3, and L4 vertebrae. My parents weren't home at the time. My sister was a national championship horseback rider, so they would often have to go traveling for horse shows. So they were at a horse show at the time. And that night, because they were away, I was going to have a party. And of course, and I had my friends come over and they're like, "Oh, you hurt your back, here, take this, you'll feel better." And I did, like, took the pain away. And of course, I didn't go to the doctor or anything like that because I don't want to make it a big thing. So I'm walking around like this and I don't feel anything. The next day I wake up and I can't walk. So my brother actually had to bring me to the hospital where I discovered I, fractured these vertebrae.
Yeah.
So I end up in like the harness, the whole 9 yards, have to be off my feet, and I get prescribed Oxycontin. So now I'm prescribed it. Now my friends that were into this are like, they were well versed in this at this point, and they were hiding it from those friends that aren't really into it, So now that they discovered that, I have a legitimate injury, they started teaching me about this thing called doctor shopping. And I was like, "What's that?" And they're like, "Well, you could go to different doctors and get these scripts and they'll give it, 300 pills for a month and you could sell these things for like $20, $30 a piece." So I'm like, "Are you serious? Like people buy these for $20, $30 a piece?" And they're like, yeah. So I was like, okay, like let's try it. Let's see what it goes. And so that's what we started doing. And we had like 7 to 9 doctors at a time giving us hundreds of pills each a month.
Wow.
So we had thousands of pills on us. And, my friend would sell them, I would sell them. And of course, when you have this on you, you're going to start using it. So, and I was prescribed it. So I had a legitimate excuse to do this.
Yeah.
The doctor didn't tell me to sniff them, but that's how I chose to do this. And it was, I literally went, this stuff is so addicting that I literally went from snorting a quarter of a 30 milligram Oxycontin to using 14 30 milligram Oxycontins a day within the 2-month period.
Wow.
One was the accessibility to it, but just the need to stay in this hollowed out kind of state of mind. So this was like at the tail end of my senior year that this all started happening. So we go into summer, we get into college, and that's where things really start to unravel. One, because I don't have like my parents and the accountability around me anymore. So although I had to kind of fake it, when my parents are around and hold it together a little bit. So it wasn't like I was using all day. It was kind of like I'd wait until like nighttime and,
Mhm.
hang out with my friends and party. Once I went to college, it was, no holds bar. Nobody's watching me. So I didn't live that double life anymore. It was just that.
That was it.
Where we fell down very quickly. I ended up getting pulled over eventually. And I had all these pills on me, a list of people who owe me money and so on and so forth. So they knew what was up. They asked me to wear a wire to go to the doctors that I was getting this stuff from, to which I said, do I get out of here if I do that? And they said, yep, you can leave right now if you sign this agreement. So, of course, I took that because I'm ashamed of what I'm doing, at this point, and I don't want my parents to know what's happening. And I'm failing out of college after being an AP student, getting into pre-med school, all this stuff, so a lot of questions are coming up from my parents. I don't know how to answer them. I'm out of it, I'm using all day. So you could just tell, like, I'm like a zombie, so my parents are worried, and I can tell because they're questioning me every time they can get, but scared to push me too much to
Right.
upset me kind of thing. So really crappy place to be as a parent. And after that, I couldn't go to my doctors anymore because I knew they were being watched, right? So from there, me and my friends discovered heroin, and it was way cheaper, instead of $30, it was $2. So it was an economical decision to go down that route, which once you go down that route, you get such a large quantity for such a cheap price that your addiction goes, through the roof. And that's where it really went downhill. And it wasn't long until, everybody caught on. I started having to steal things. I started scrapping metal, like sold every tool out of our farm because I was just trying to feed this habit that I couldn't sustain anymore. So then I ended up in my first rehab. And this is the problem for parents with treatment, is that there's no real guidance for them, and anything that they could look up is an advertisement, right? It's not necessarily a good guiding material, but it's an advertisement of someone on the other side. So my parents did what most parents do and called the insurance, the number on the back of the insurance card to send me to the first place. And of course, the insurance company has their own agenda, right? They want to send you to the cheapest place because
They
it's
do.
cheaper for them. So I end up at this terrible treatment center. There's like mold on the walls, and like it is just everything you can imagine that a stereotypical treatment center would be. So I was calling them every day, like, get me out of here, and they're like, and I eventually convinced them after 3 weeks that I was cured and you can bring me home, which I wasn't. And it didn't take me long to fall back down. Went to my next treatment center, like a outpatient. I failed every single drug test I was there. They never called my parents to let them know, and were just keeping me there, even though I was using the entire time. And, from there, it was just like intervention sent here. And it's just every time I went to a new place, it was the same cookie cutter model. And I am a smart person, even though I've made a lot of dumb decisions in my life. So by the third one, I'm like, I could teach this course. Like I was like sleeping in the groups because I'm like, all right, I know this tool. I've done this, this is what you do, and so it got really boring. I wasn't being challenged. I didn't feel like I was really uprooting anything that I needed to get to in my recovery process. It was like I was just going through the motions and I'm being babysat for the time being. And as soon as don't have the babysitter, it's off to the races. Where it was really crushing to your psyche, because you're like, I just can't get this. And there was a few instances that I did try to really dive into it. Like, okay, let me fake it till I make it. Let me get a sponsor. Let me do those steps. Let me do these things. And what I found time and time again, my experience was that, like, I would challenge some of these things, not in a egotistical way, but like this, I hear what you're saying, but this doesn't make sense, and this is why it doesn't make sense to me. Like, can you give me some reflection? And you're dealing with peers that aren't really clinically sound to really go to that like philosophical debate. So most of the time I would get like, look, like, this is the way it is, and like, you gotta fake it till you make it, and jails, institutions, and death, these things just swirled around. And I'm like, okay, that's not really an answer to this,
No, not
or
at
I'm
all.
told it's my addictive ego. And I'm like, okay, so this recovery process is all about sitting down, shutting up. And I just felt really small, like in this process. So I'm like, I don't fit here. I don't fit in this box that they're trying to fit me in. And I'm being told if I don't fit in the box, I'm going to die, end up in jail or institution. So I guess that's my life. And that's kind of what I came to conclusion with, which is really sad. And I was young, I'm 19, 20 years old. So I'm like, I got a lot of years of going back and forth. So it became really dark because I didn't want to do this forever. I wasn't happy with where I was at, but I didn't see a way through. And I ended up in California with one of these treatment centers. And
How long was it from the time you tried all the other ones until you went to the one in California?
The one in California, so there's two in California. The first one was number 6 treatment, and then I got lucky on number 7.
Wow. Number 7. Lucky sevens. This is good. There's a reason they call it sevens.
Yeah, exactly. So, so we went out to California. I ended up in a sober living, if you could call it that. I mean, it was a place everybody was using. We were using designer drugs, as they call it, like bath salts, stuff like that. So they wouldn't come up on a drug test, but we're a bunch of 19, 20-year-old kids just up to no good and really lost. We're all lost, So it was a matter of time till we got kicked out of there. We actually moved out before we got kicked out. I got my own apartment, and I kind of came to the conclusion, like, I'm never going to get this. And I hated hurting my family. So I was like, I'm in California, so I won't affect them if I'm this far away from them, and they could just kind of move on with their life. And I'm going to go out with a bang kind of ordeal. So obviously we moved out, got an apartment, had a job as a waiter, and we could only hold it together for so long. We ended up meeting crystal meth, and life got really crazy. We were starting to mule drugs over the border of Mexico for the cartel. We were prostituting, you name it. We were doing whatever we can to support this habit. We ended up losing the apartment, getting kicked out. We were homeless for quite some time, living in abandoned buildings, and it got dark, and it got dark quick. I mean, this all happened over a 5-month period.
Jeez.
So, and we all cut off our families. We all went to treatment together. So it was like, we all went together, went out. And I got to the point where I was actively suicidal, trying to end this because it was getting ugly. Like, I couldn't even look at myself in the mirror anymore. I was just 96 pounds from not eating and just doing meth. And, we're raggedy, we're dirty, we're not showering. We're just like, I'm like, dude, you're so gone. So I was too scared to actually kill myself. So I would just put more and more drugs in the next syringe, hoping that would be too much, like trying to fake myself out, if you will. And my mom and dad, obviously, like, they were affected. They were scared to death for their son. They were worried sick. My sisters are falling apart. My one sister became the perfectionist, trying to hold everybody together. It's her first year in college. She's got her own shit she's trying to deal with, and she's trying to hold the family together. My younger sister, who's the baby, she was only 12 at the time. She's out of focus because they're all focused on me. My parents are fighting with each other what they should do, shouldn't do, how to handle this. I was tearing my family apart 3,000 miles away, and I'm slowly trying to end my life, and my mom couldn't take this anymore. My mom, she's a superwoman, and she found out one of the people that I left treatment with, she was my girlfriend, and She found out, like, doing some Facebook, whatever, following on Facebook, that her mom was going to try to come out and visit us in California. Now, I didn't know the two of them were kind of setting this up. The other mom didn't want my mom to, like, ambush us, but the other mom was coming out thinking that she's just going to visit us and we still have the apartment and everything. That my girlfriend was lying to her. And the only interest that she had with her mom coming out there at the time was she had her tax return check. So we were trying to get that check for money. And my mom found this out that she was arriving. My mom literally hid it in a bush at the airport and waited for this mom to come out and my girlfriend to roll up. And my mom jumped out of the bush, hijacked the car, literally ordered her to take her to her son right now. And, Christine was, my girlfriend was, flabbergasted, like shook, and totally ruined the plans of like whatever elaborate plan we had to continue lying to her mother. And she rolls up to this abandoned hotel and tells her what door I'm in, and my mom kicks open the door. Now meanwhile, I just got a syringe ready. I was tying off my arm, and then all of a sudden this door slams open, and I hear it was a surreal moment because it's a dark, dingy, dusty room, and then all of a sudden the door flings open and the lights bursting in and you can't see outside. It's like you're blinded, and I just see a silhouette, and then I hear my mom's voice, and it was like I regressed to like a 4-year-old state. And she said, "Dan, come on, we're gonna go get you some help." And it was like I regressed to a 4-year-old. So I was like, "Okay, Mom." I like untied my arm, put on my shoes, and walked out. And my mom was absolutely horrified, but one, the living conditions, but two, what I looked like. I mean, I'm at like needle marks all the way up and down my arms, on my stomach, because I was so skinny. I had veins out of my ribs, so I was shooting into my ribs, and it's a mess. 96 pounds, And so she's trying to hold it together, and I can see her back swallowing and trying to remain calm. And she's like, she puts me in the car. We were going to this hotel. She was going, a mutual friend that we had out there. She was going to bring me to his house and then pack up my stuff and bring me back to New Jersey and get me better. But she knew, like, looking at me, like, this kid's not getting on a plane. And I'm starting to get disgruntled. Like, it's wearing off, and I'm in psychosis from being, the longest I stayed up on meth was 11 days straight, like not sleeping. So this was like day 6 this round. So I'm in psychosis. So that kind of kicks in where I'm making up things in my head and seeing shadow people and different things like that, where I start freaking out, like, let me die, let me go, you can't keep me, I need my drugs, and my mom doesn't know how to handle this, so she ends up calling the cops. That angers me even more. I start reciting my rights to the cops and everything like that, and they're like, "No, Dan, you're gonna come with us," which resulted in me fighting them. Getting into a
you were only 96 pounds, so I can imagine how that played out.
No, it took like, because of
a lot of energy,
because of the math. It took about 7 or 8 cops to keep me down. I ended up breaking one of the cops' noses in the middle of this. They had to taser me 3 times, and I fell into a concrete ledge. I split my eye open. My whole entire eyebrow was hanging over my eye, and I peed myself from getting tasered because you lose your, the mobility of your body. So I am a mess, like now. Like, face is hanging off my face. I'm bleeding. I got urine all over me. A mess. And they literally put me in a straitjacket. They put me in a straitjacket and sent me to the psych ward. And they never searched me, like, throughout all this chaos. Searched my persons. And when they told me to put on my gown at the hospital, I got undressed and I went into one of my pockets and I found about 3 grams of bath salts that were still in there. So me still being in this chaotic mindset, I'm like, I need to use all this before they lock me away. So I literally snorted 3 grams of bath salts in the bathroom, which they saw me do on camera. So they all came busting into the room and everything like that. Tackled me to the ground. But I got most of it, and when I went belligerent because now I'm high again, and they kept they hit me with the, we call it booty juice, but it's like Halidol and everything, where they put a shot into you, and it knocks you out, and it knocked me out. I woke up the next day in the ambulance, getting like all strapped up, getting moved to another hospital. But I was high. Like I came out of like that, what they gave me, and the drugs were still active in my system. So I started freaking out again. And for almost 5 days, I tried to escape this psychiatric place. And it was like Groundhog's Day. Like I would get up out of this, like whatever they gave me, try to escape, get tackled by a guard, get it again, get thrown into the battered room, wake up, do it again. Like it was just this over and over. And what should have been like a 48-hour cycle turned into almost 7 days. So it was crazy. The last time, finally, like I came down and the drugs wore off, and then my mom came in to visit me, and I literally crawled into her lap, and I was just like, "I'm sorry. I don't know what you want me to do, but you." Like I don't even know who I am anymore. Like
Right.
I'm gone. She was crying and I was crying, and she was just like, "We'll figure it out," you know. And I was like, "Okay, I'll give it a shot." And
Right.
my grandfather, funny enough, saw a commercial on TV for a treatment center, which happened to be right down the road from this hospital. And I needed, the rules from the judge was I could only be released if I was like, had a guard essentially sign that they are going to be in charge of me and not let me run off property and all that kind of stuff. So this is one of the only places that would do that for me. And you could call it a God moment, whatever it may be, but this place was different than the rest. There's multiple pathways to recovery.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my first groups I had, Noah Rothschild, was a therapist, an amazing guy. And he did a workshop on inner child therapy. And it was just like a light bulb went off. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this makes sense. Because I didn't have like this big traumatic event, of abuse in my household.
No.
I had everything good growing up, so I just thought I was broken. Like I didn't have an excuse for my behavior. So like I'm just messed up, like the way I think. But when we started unraveling these things, I started remembering like that heavy feeling that I had as a kid. Like all that stuff started coming back where I'm like, okay, like it's not about blaming the reason, but it's about finding that root cause to what set off the snowball effect of irrational beliefs that I have.
Right.
And so once I could see it, then I can do something about it, right? So that's what we started doing, and I dove into it. And then meanwhile, they're showing me all these different things like smart recovery and refuge recovery and meditation and yoga. And, I didn't like all of it, but a lot of it I did. And it was so different than everything else that I was like, oh my God, there's hope for me.
Yeah.
And I like this. I could do this. And then at the end of my stay, after 28 days, and I put the work in, I was dedicated, like, we're going to do it this time. And I went to my discharge planner and they handed me this binder, which is like the plan that I'm supposed to follow when I leave here to continue doing these things. And it said, do 90 meetings in 90 days, 12-step program. And I'm like, wait, you gave me all this stuff for 28 days. You have me on fire. Like I'm ready to do this. And then you're handing me go backwards to the thing that you did before that didn't work. I'm like, what is wrong with you? And they're like, well, Dan, there's nothing that really exists like this. And, you're going back to New Jersey, and New Jersey doesn't, they don't really have Eastern philosophy things like acupuncture and stuff. It's just not widely available. I'm sorry. And I was defeated. I left that office and I called my mom right away, and I was just like, Mom, like she's been checking up. She knows everything that I've been doing for the last 28 days. So I was crying, and I'm like, I feel like this was a fucking waste of time. And, she's scared because she can't do what she didn't get me out of that place again. And she's like, Dan, if it doesn't exist, we'll build it. And I came back home and we started right then and there. I was in a very different mindset though. Like I came home and I gave myself rules in the household instead of my parents giving me rules. And me and my mom, we would sit down every Sunday and we would write out my week schedule, and we went and tried to find all these different therapies that I was experiencing. I continued with Noah like on a virtual basis.
Yeah.
Before virtual was a thing, But we just made it work, and it was working. I got, a job. I got back into school, get back into some kind of helping profession. Like I was pre-med before. It was always something that I enjoyed doing. And then I wanted to follow this path. So I got into social work school, and all my friends growing up, I had 27 very close friends, and only one of them didn't end up in addiction.
Wow.
Every other one had a drug problem. Sadly, only 6 of them are still alive at this point.
Oh my goodness.
And 3 out of 6 are, one never touched drugs, so he's good. The other 2 found recovery. The other 3 are still out. So I didn't have any friends. When I came back, I couldn't hang out with them. And, I had to recreate this life for me. But some of them, wanted help. So they would come and ask me what am I doing? And then they started telling their friends, and I started helping them and just guiding them, creating a recovery, action plan for them and linking them to different resources. And I started seeing like, okay, like I'm not the only one that this cookie cutter approach isn't working for. Like people need multiple pathways. So I was also struggling because I was 21 years old when I got sober. So that's a very difficult age to decide to do
Not the
this.
perfect age to do that, but yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I finally got the allowance to be to drink in public, but it was difficult because everybody in my age group, how do I meet new friends that aren't doing this thing? Like that aren't drinking, that are, perpetuating sobriety is at the forefront of, their values and stuff. So it was very difficult. And how do I meet girls and stuff like that? So I was struggling from a social aspect, even all these other great things. I was with my family every single day, which was fantastic. I love my family, but also I'm 21 years old. I would, want, a friend group. So with all this, we started a nonprofit, and it started out as a sober meetup group that we do cool things on the weekend. I could help link you to resources and build a recovery action plan. And then, as we got bigger, more people started coming. I'm like, okay, we need like a program like that people can follow and put it into action. So then we started doing meetings every week, and my house turned into a recovery hotel. God bless my parents for allowing this to happen in our home. But literally, it started at their kitchen table, and then we took over the entire like basement. We had a finished basement. And then it got to the point, like, we had people literally in the rafters. So, I had about 70, 80 people coming to my meeting.
Wow.
And we couldn't fit anymore. So this kept growing. And then we converted the barn that we have. We have a family farm. So we converted the barn into a meeting house so that we could fit everybody. And then I, doing this work with individuals on that peer basis, there was a lot of trauma and things that were really needed, like a clinical intervention that we were unable to give. And, people needed medications, things of that nature. I was finishing up social work school. And so I decided that, hey, I think we should start a treatment center because there's still no treatment centers that are doing this other than the one I went to. But there was a lot of changes with insurances and everything that the place that I went to, it was covered by my insurance. But at this point in time, this was like 2015, 2016 at this point, they weren't even accepting insurance. They wanted you to do a cash pay, which is $140,000 a month for 30 days. So impossible for the average person to be able to do this. So I was like, there's no reason that we can't offer this that's accessible to people. So that's what I set out to do, is to create a clinical care program that had these values and was connected to the aftercare portion, which that other treatment center didn't give me. So you have a direct line into a long-term community of people in recovery, that you're doing things on the weekends, you're filling your life with purpose and passion and learning about tools and modalities and have a warm handoff into life. Yeah. So that's what we created. So in 2015, we got our first sober living, and then we opened up our first center by 2019. And it was hard because we literally opened and then
COVID hits.
I'm learning how to, I'm coming from the peer realm and social work realm. Now I have to learn business, which a lot of times those two worlds collide.
Yes, they do.
And then while I'm doing this and losing my rose-colored glasses that I have, COVID hits, and a whole new set of obstacles to get through. But we made it through all that, and, we developed a very amazing team here at Healing Us. A lot of people that I saved throughout the years, I've found recovery, came over and work on the management side here. And, we've done it together and built a really beautiful place that has saved countless lives. And then we decided to start expanding in 2022. So we opened up our second center in Jersey, as well as a center in Fort Myers, Florida. And we're not stopping anytime soon. We've added multiple sober livings. We're adding centers in the next couple of years. So it's been a beautiful thing. And my mother and I, we've done it side by side. She has retired over the last couple of years. I told her it's time for her
I
to
think she earned it.
enjoy herself.
I think she earned it.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's a beautiful thing.
Just what a story, Daniel. There's obviously been someone looking over you for a long time, and that was your mom and your family for sure. But just to have all those things come together at exactly the right time and then to follow through with it is the reason that others will listen to this and feel strength within your story, because you have a story on, well, you didn't mention steroids anywhere along this process, but there was every other drug that you've tried through there. So I guess you've tried everything in between it. And I believe that when people hear of how your struggles were just real, and when I say real, they can't be any more real when you look in the mirror and you see what's behind it, because the mirror doesn't lie. And for you to finally have that chance on the seventh try, it had to be power within, and the facility was great, and I'm glad they did it differently because it gave you an opportunity to witness it. And now you witness that to many others. I mean, you mentioned you've got 120 people a day in your facilities, another 300 in outpatient. I mean, that's touching a lot of people every moment of every day. And that culture that you've created by others that know your story, because now I'll know your story forever, right? They can appreciate where the lowest of low point is. And no one knows that until they've lived it, but you've lived it. And you're lucky that it was able to come out the other side at such a young age, and to now have the other side of it, to have a child and to have, a life that shows how much more there is to fight for, right? To actually fight for.
Absolutely.
And you have, which is just awesome. And I appreciate the fact that you've been able to bring the second phase and the third phase into it, because it's as much as it is to get over the initial, can I do this? I did it. Now there's everything else later. In every other day of every hour. And I'm sure you still, because of your personality, there's certain things just don't go away. Like, it is what it is. You got to fill that void with something else. And the fact that you have that facility and people and teachers and just constant mentors in front of you is awesome. So I'm going to kind of cut it off here because we got a lot. I had a bunch of other questions I was going to talk to. I think we'll just have to have another podcast or two or three or four, because I wanted to really get into the different types of the facilities you have between the detox, the inpatient, the partial day, the intensive outpatient, and the housing, how all that are individual points of where you are or where the person is in their process. I mean, they all have very serious lines. It's not, they dot to one another, but when you're going through each part of it, there's a reason why they're broken out. And I'm sure you have a reason personally and professionally for make that happen. So, but with that, why don't you talk about the name of your facility and how people could get a hold of you, and hopefully they will.
Yeah. Our umbrella branding is called Healing Us Centers, and underneath it, our nonprofit is called Healing Us Communities. So that is the peer support network that we've created. You can go on healingus.org to that website, and it's very easy to apply for housing or contact us through that website, and you can see everything that we offer. The program is completely free, so it is accessible to anyone that needs it. We will always answer the phone, and we will do our best to give you what you need. And then we have our treatment centers. There's 3 different ones. They're named Relevance, Avisa, and Calusa. They offer the same levels of care, PHP to outpatient care, with residential setting as well. And you can look at all those centers at hucenters.com. And if you want to hear my story, or read my story, should I say, in more depth, you can find it on Amazon. It's called Healing Us, and by Daniel Regan. So you'll see it on there. It's available. I think it's $12.99. I tried to make it it was whatever the lowest that Amazon would let me put it at.
Oh, wow.
But it's available. You'll get my story in more detail, where I really break down the thinking and the thought processes, and you get to see that inner child therapy go off. And what was cool about the book as well is that we put my mother's perspective in the book. So it's my version of what was going on, and then it's my mother's version of what was going on. So you can really see the dynamic of the family happening, because a lot of parents blame themselves, right? And they don't really know how to get out from underneath that. And it's not fair. It's not It's not their fault. I mean, they may have caused some suffering there and some of it, but ultimately it's an unraveling that has happened in that person's brain. So it breaks that down in a really cool way.
Sounds like a great resource and a great read.
Yeah.
Both sides of it. Well, Daniel, thank you. Thank you
You're very welcome.
for this. And I do look forward to hearing more of your story as we break down so much more of what's happened in your time. And maybe I might have to reach out to your mom as well, because I didn't know we could do an overlay of a story time in the podcast, because I bet episode 1 to episode 3 would look very different from perspective, but
Yes.
they all are part of the story. They all are part of the story. So thank you. And I look forward to speaking to you again.
Thank you. Look forward to that.
Thank you. Bye-bye.